You are listening to Aim Higher, a Catholic podcast designed to instruct and to encourage the daily practice of our faith. Pax et bonum, peace and good to you all. This is Aim Higher podcast. I am Father Anthony, and with me is Sister Catherine. I could say, as always, it's very rare that when I'm on, you are not on. I haven't
Correct.
done a solo episode in a long time. Let me just kind of readjust this. I don't know. For some reason, my screen just really shows up more. Or maybe, it just kind of pale me up a little bit so my red face doesn't show as much. So people, it might be less distracting, more distracting. I don't know. We'll find out. Maybe you just don't want to look at me at all, and we will not see the video anymore.
Yeah, your face does not distract me, but I'm used to kind of looking beyond you.
Yeah. Before we got on, before we press record, talking with Sister a little bit, and she says, "Father, I got something I order for you. It's for your face." Now, what's wrong with my face? Well, it's subjective, I suppose. But oh boy, it has been a time and a half since we have done an episode. The last few weeks have been very busy,
Mhm.
and things that were expected, things that are not expected, things that we are preparing for, things that we were not prepared for have happened. But it's been a very interesting few weeks. But I'll like well, since out of sheer politeness, I would say, Sister, what's new with you? What's been going on over the last few weeks since we have done an official episode?
Well, I mean, now I don't want to answer because you're only asking me out of sheer politeness. You don't do you actually care?
No, but
Okay, well,
no,
that's
what
I'm
I
not gonna
meant
let
was
that stop me.
let me explain this.
I know, I'm
What I meant
just
was
kidding.
because I'm the one talking. For me to
Uh-huh.
just start blabbing on about what I have done, it's just kinda rude. Since I am the one who is initiating, it is polite to ask someone whom you are very interested in knowing what's been going on. Say, "You go first," because gentlemen, let the ladies go first.
And age
I'm a
before beauty.
gentleman, age before beauty. Exactly. You
Boy,
figured it out. So, sister,
yeah,
we got a lot of interesting things going on, things
we
we're getting
do.
ready for. So, um, I will ask the question again, this time with sincerity. So, sister, what's going on? What's new?
What's new? Oh, well, at the time we will release this episode will be right before we have our first youth retreat here in
Mhm.
Rochester. Um,
Yeah.
and this was kind of one of those things where it came up last year at the children's retreat in I was gonna say Wisconsin, Kentucky, because we had a few older kids, teenagers, and the question was posed to them, like, "If we did something for your age, would you be interested?" And it was a um, pretty
Resounding, yeah.
enthusiastic, yeah,
Yeah.
response. And I will say that for our first year, we've had quite the, response,
Mhm.
pretty good number, coming
Mhm.
in, and so at this point, I mean, there was only so much I could do ahead of time. Now that we're about a week away from people actually arriving, now it's kinda getting to
Right.
the smaller things. I have been doing some baking and freezing cookies, um, but I just recently went shopping for food, and it's a little weird to me because our pantry is nearly full. You know, I have stuff there, and I look
Mhm.
at it, and I feel a little overwhelmed because our pantry does not look like that. Our refrigerators, we have 2, 'cause we got one for what some purpose, so we tried to just keep some things down there.
Oh,
And I'm grateful we have it for this instance, but um, but it's just looking at all of this, I'm not used to the excess because I I when I shop for us on a regular basis, I always shop for what I know we're going to consume in about a week's time, so at the
yeah.
end of the week, the refrigerator is pretty empty. The cupboard is just I have a few things just for, like, just in case, but mostly, um, it's kind of as we need it, which we've, um, talked with his excellency fits more in line with Franciscan poverty, trusting in God's providence. We're not trying to store
Mhm.
up things, for the future because it's one day at a time. So to see, like, all this stuff right now is just a little weird to me. Um,
Mm.
but, we're expecting, let's see here, 2, 10 10 youth possibly, and, these are all at least teenagers, young adults, so they can eat, and so I need to make sure that, um, I provide, you know, plenty, and also,
Mhm.
I'm not relying on, cheap, like, I'm not doing hamburger helper, um,
Oh,
I'm
but that makes a
sorry,
great meal.
I mean, you can do a hamburger helper from scratch, but this it would be
Well,
practical
yeah,
just
you
as
can. Yeah, it's not gonna
yeah,
have that artificial flavor. Well, it's not the same.
that I learned that that's kind of true. I saw a recipe for, uh, okay, so at certain times you get the Reese's peanut butter and they have the eggs for Easter, and I had seen someone share a recipe like, you can make your own. I was like, "Okay, I've got the ingredients, why not?" And they're okay, and then I was like, "But it's not quite right." And then I wonder, it's like, "Do I like the chemicals? Is that what I like?" Um, so
Yeah,
I may make some up before the youth retreat.
it's like, you could make a Wendy's Frosty at home, but it's just not
Mhm,
the same.
mhm. Yeah, I've actually
It's just
seen
not the same.
I haven't done it because I guess the time and effort, and I won't go get one, but, like, you can do a Dairy Queen Blizzard at home by using your stand mixer. Like, you get and you mix in everything. It's like, "Oh, that's kinda cool," but I don't
So,
even usually
I just
keep
had a
ice
vision
cream
in
here.
my head, making your own blizzard at home, then you take the cup and you tip it, and your soul just
Yeah,
falls right.
yeah, that is what would happen. Yeah, and see, but it's not supposed to, so then it's not really,
Yeah.
like, the same.
Mhm.
So it makes you wonder what's going on there.
Hmm.
But anyway, so it's all very exciting.
It
Just
is.
final details, cleaning out the 3rd floor, because I'm putting the majority of the girls up there, kinda be like a slumber party situation, finalizing, like, the daily schedule. So this is over 3 days.
Oh,
Um,
we gotta give you a yardstick.
I have one. I'm not gonna
Oh,
use it.
yeah. Oh, you gotta use it.
And then we have one
You
that
gotta
has, like, an L
slam on a
shape.
table once in a while. Just, just
Are
like, "Okay, you're right, yeah, turn that light off." Shh.
well,
That'd be
maybe if
fun.
I bedazzle it a little bit. Yeah, but then you can't see the markings. Can it just be a ruler?
Oh,
See, and
sure.
it's funny.
I think
It's
you should have
funny,
one
like,
on your yeah,
where I sit for when we eat. Okay,
yeah.
okay. Well, and it's funny because, like, we joke about it, but, occasionally, like, the sisters used to beat us in school comes up when I talk to some people when they stop me. Um, and I remember one gentleman, and I said, "I have never, ever hit anybody with a ruler." Now, I did take a rolling pin and hit my brother in the arm one time as a kid because he hurt me, and I was just retaliating, which is not just by any means, um, but I've never used a ruler on
Was
anyone.
that Steve?
So mhm,
I was like, "You didn't do that to me."
you'd
Not that
remember
I
me or not.
recall, unless
No,
you
and
hit me in
I
the
mean,
head.
well, not that either of us can recall, but, um,
Uh, well, and,
it
it's just that since this came up in our conversation, it just kinda reminds me what people bring up when they talk about that whole thing with the sisters and how they would hit you, and it's like, "Oh, yeah, they would hit me with the rulers all the time," and I sit there and go, "Okay, is that the sister's fault, or is that your fault?" I was like, I've
And
asked the
it
question, "Were all the kids getting smacked?" It's like, "No." "Were you getting smacked?" "Yeah." "Was there a reason why you kept getting smacked?" "Yeah." "Were you
and
misbehaving a lot?" "Yeah."
and it's an interesting thing because I do have, opinions about that, and it was a different time back then, and you hear people talk about that, even, like, from our childhood, and we joke about it, like, back then, parents, they had no problem with it, they'd sign off on it.
Mm.
Um, there's pros and cons to some of it, but we're not gonna dive into that because 'cause that'll be a whole different
We're not
discussion.
diving into
But
that, and I think it's the best way to end it. Yeah, there's no pros and cons. It's just part the part where I'm bringing up here is that people will use something like that as a reason as to why I don't go to
to church.
church anymore,
Yeah.
and it's like, this was a big turnoff. As one man once said, "I am a recovering Catholic," and I looked at him like, "That is the stupidest thing that I ever heard anyone say." Like, "What do you mean you're
Yeah.
recovering from what?" I was like, "Wouldn't you be a recovering Catholic that you, returned to Catholicism?" Made no sense. I think he was just trying to be
Mhm.
witty, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna also throw this out there before we move on, that you have those who did experience that sort of, physical reprimand, but they understood it and appreciated it, and they were better for it. You know,
And sometimes
they
it only
weren't
has to happen
holding it
once.
against, they got, "Well, yeah, I deserved it." And that's oftentimes that person, um, is one that's looking to embrace humility a little bit more. Uh, they just kinda just looked at, "Okay, what did I do to that situation?" Even though I was a kid, I was a horrible child, and I deserved it. Others have a different outlook, and I'm just saying that I've
Sure.
seen both. I've seen both sides of it. Me,
Well,
I
and
I got a good balance. I was punished, and I was lauded. Not lauded, but, you know.
positive, reinforcement, I don't know, positive
Yeah,
feedback,
yeah.
but I will add, like, I didn't actually hit him with the rolling pin, it was just I went up to him, he was sitting in a recliner, and I just tapped him on the forearm with it. That's all and what you want you to know, like, that there's a big blow up, and then I've got mom on my case for it, and never mind what he did to me, which the thing was, he took a pillow and smashed it hard in my face, and it hurt. It did hurt, and you probably think, "Oh, a pillow, come on." The way my nose got shoved back into my face hurt, okay? But that's not how he and mom saw it, so, um, I was
Yeah,
angry,
but, you know, you do have to realize is that, okay, if you just look at as it's stated, well, he one got hit with a pillow, the other got hit with a rolling pin. Now, if
but
you
I'll
just
add it
throw
was
it out
tapped.
there,
Tapped
not the
rolling pin,
same
just a
thing.
light tap, a light tap
Light tap.
like that.
Now, was this one of those times that our brother decided to act like, someone just stabbed him, and then he just kinda rolled on the floor? I know he would do
No,
that from time to time. He
and
would
here's the thing,
act like he was
we were
horribly
well
injured. He would just play it up.
yeah, family of actors, I tell you.
Oh, yeah. I guess
And
so.
the thing is,
Yeah.
I wanna say I was probably at least 15, 16 years old when this happened. So, for all I know, you or it could have even
Oh
been later and you were out in minor seminary. Um, so
oh,
it was just
it was
yeah, we
that
were
late? Oh, I
mhm.
thought you were talking like when you were, like, kids, not teenagers.
No, no, no. Anyway,
Alright, that makes
so
this story a little kind of
so
this makes that story a little ridiculous in my opinion.
well, it is
Not
absolutely
on your
ridiculous. I
end,
don't know
not
who
on your
I
end.
no, I feel it's ridiculous, but,
No, I mean, it makes me think our brother and our mother are being a little ridiculous over it.
yes, yes, but,
And
look
I'm
back
going to say this, not knowing any of the, uh, circumstances that really led up to it other than the pillow shoving. Of course, now it's the difference between, when you have a a kid doing it as to a teenager, and our brother was not a small teenager. I'm just gonna put it this way, I automatically would assume that it was his fault. Okay.
Oh, I would actually put in there, like, because of the time frame of my age and my moods, I probably was being really difficult. Like, that's entirely possible. But all I can remember is I was sitting in the living room minding my own business and get a pillow. And so he might have been doing it as a joke, thought it was funny, and
Well,
it
I'm
just
sure he
because it
was.
hurt. Yeah. But anyway, it's just fun
Wow.
things.
We
So,
went
but anyway,
beyond recapping what we've been doing lately, We're just kinda
well, you brought up a
are
pillow.
we
I think I
is this gonna be our outlet now? We're just gonna rehash old issues from our
It's
childhood?
just yeah, therapy. Well, no, but I I just it's is a good reminder to all of us how, um, you're not always someone's cup of tea. If you're frustrated with someone, you're probably frustrating somebody else. Like, you're not always, like,
True.
the innocent party. Um, and also, your parents are growing with you. So and who knows? Like I said, I don't really remember the circumstances before that. I could have been, being sassy to mom for all I remember, and Steve was tired of it and thought to put a pillow in my face. That could have been the circumstances. So, because sadly I was a very moody teenager. I'm not gonna be like, "Oh, I regret it," in the sense
No.
that I know, shocking. I I can understand why in some ways I was that way. And it's like, okay, now, don't let things get rile you up, insignificant things. I've learned to be very calm over the last probably 15, 20 years, probably especially in the last 10. I've learned a lot from Bishop Giles, just and one of the bigger lessons that I hold is he told me, don't view people as having the best intentions. Even if it didn't work out, try to look at it like they meant well. And I get that there are some people that absolutely do mean to do harm, are complete
True.
mean, sure. But ultimately, for your own
Well,
I don't know, sense of reasoning, try to think, well,
conscious.
maybe they thought this was gonna go differently. And that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I like to think, maybe I'm naive, but most people have the good
the
intentions,
best
or at
intention.
least they don't intend evil on you.
Right. Well, how many times have you done something the best intentions and it didn't work out? Like, and it kinda
Never,
caused maybe a kerfuffle, you know?
never. It was all
Yeah, of
everything I've
course
done
not,
has
Father.
always been perfect.
Yeah, that one Holy
Right.
Saturday where you set something on fire? Sure. Yeah, you had good
I
intentions.
didn't
No.
set anything on fi oh, well, I thought I planned it all out. I was perfect,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
my mind, but
you
I
thought
just
you had it figured out.
it was a miscalculation,
But
and
imagine
I
if
and I
they
burned through a table. Hey, what can I say? Not
but
through a
imagine if,
table.
Father Bernard would just have looked at it as, "Well, what were you thinking?" Of course, I don't know how was he up in Radisson when that happened, but let's
You,
just say you
yeah,
had
he was.
a superior. Okay, but let's say he was there. He might have been like, "Hmm, that was a little." Maybe he would have been upset. I don't really know,
Mm.
but ultimately, it's looking as like, well, you didn't intend for that to happen. Stuff sometimes just happens. So,
It's well, if someone asked me, "Father, what were you thinking?" I said, "I was thinking it would work." That's what I was thinking. I know, but it's true, and it's
yeah,
for us, uh, for ourselves, it's just better to think the best of people and their intentions, because as we say, we can't control what other people say or do or think, but we can control how we respond to these things, and there is quite a bit of comfort in that, a spiritual freedom when you don't bog yourself down with things you can't control. It is really giving it to God's will. Yes, I know when we're dealing with another person's free will, I can't as say that it was directly God's divine will on that. I'm not saying that, but God allows these things to transpire for one reason or another. And your hope is that you take as much spiritual, um, as much from these spiritual lessons as possible,
Mhm.
and praying that they do the same.
Right. Well,
We can learn
how
from it
else do
and
you
understand each other.
practice patience unless you're tried in patience? And how do you really love your
Right?
neighbor and your enemy without there being something to
Some
really have to
conflict.
yeah. So, but
Well,
anyway, some
it's like that
treat.
scripture saying, I'm sorry, it's been
You're not over this yet.
I'm not over this yet. As it said in scripture, what a beautiful thing when brothers can dwell together as one. Uh, it is a beautiful thing, but to dwell together as one also means recognize we all have faults and failings, and being ready to forgive one another, and be understanding. That's how you dwell together as one. And because Christ was forgiving, Christ was understanding, Christ was merciful. And Christ is the only one in this conversation who is completely innocent. So
Yes, yes. Good
we'll move
reminder.
on to that.
But anyway, super excited about the retreat.
Oh, yeah, that's what we were talking about. Yeah, the
Yeah, that is
retreat.
what we were talking you brought up the ruler. I do think I have a wooden like, a little wooden ruler somewhere. I will have that out for fun.
I
Um,
am looking forward to this retreat. I mean, I remember when it originated, we talked about it, so let's just do it. As long
mhm,
as the bishop's okay with it, and Rochester is the ideal place to do this retreat, and, I am genuinely excited,
yeah,
and I'm bringing up some kids from
yeah,
children, teenagers
uh, teenagers.
from Wisconsin. It's gonna be it's gonna be a fun road trip.
Yeah, we have a
I got
family coming.
I got the vehicle primed and ready for this trip.
Excellent, excellent, and, well, we have a family coming from Texas, there's a couple from, a few from Ohio, Kentucky, so
Mhm.
we're hitting it pretty good, but yes, everybody pray for father's safe trip coming out here, um, but it is good, we have a kind of like a theme figured out, I have to finalize our schedule, but
Mhm.
it's looking good, and it really was one we just have to do it, if you try to figure out all the ducks in a row, like, then it was never going to come together. It just wouldn't. You just have to kinda like, "Okay, this is what we're gonna do. Let's just do it and, figure
Mhm.
it out as we
Yeah,
go along."
you
So,
got it.
but I'm
And it's very Franciscan, and we have a set schedule, we have the regular life, but also you have to have flexibility. Be able
yeah,
to go with the flow. It's one thing we like Father Joseph and I talk about. It always comes up in conversation when we get together. I was with him last week because last week I was in Texas because he had to come here for a visitation for the Third Order, and I came a few days early. We're getting some stuff done for the radio programs of new commercials and such. And, but it always comes up in conversation about you have a plan, things you wanna get done that day, but it can change with a phone call. We were
mhm,
uh, this time it talked about, like, Holy Saturday, for instance. I forgot why it came up, but just how busy we are. And as I said to him, I said, "Well, things are going well. I always try to plan Holy Saturday. Like, I get everything done and I'm all set, ready to go, but something always happens. Like this last year, I had a phone conference for somebody for over 2 hours, and I'm not going to not talk to a person because it's inconvenient. It just some days you just can't do it. I could do it, but, you know, it took from the rest of my day that I had to kinda run, but it's part of what you gotta do. You gotta be
mhm,
flexible, and I had to be flexible when I was in Texas because I was supposed to fly out last Sunday, which would have been the 26th,
mhm.
and,
25th,
25th, yes. Yeah, the
day
25th,
before Memorial Day.
the day before Memorial Day, and I had to change my flight because it kept getting delayed. There was horrible weather in, Dallas, which is where I have to fly Lubbock to Dallas to Milwaukee, and, yeah, it got so delayed that it's like, there's no way I would make my connection. I had, like, 20 minutes between landing to when my flight leaves, and they close the boarding 15 minutes before, you
Mhm.
actually the flight leaves, so it's like,
And
there's no
Dallas is
way,
not a
so
small airport.
we went to the airport, just got changed my ticket, went back, and, so, "Alright, we'll leave Monday, do more things with father." Great. Monday night, kept getting delayed until it was actually canceled, my flight out of, Dallas. So, it was like, "Well," he said, "You can fly into Dallas if you want, but we don't know what you're gonna do." So, I decided best just to stay again in Lubbock. I was very fortunate. Some people get stuck somewhere, uh,
Mhm.
and I was told, I didn't ever thought about it, that if it's weather, the airline is not going to, reimburse you. They're not going
Right.
to, like, pay for your room or anything. If it was mechanical error, something on their fault, yes, they would, but not
Mhm.
what they call an act of God. So, how many people, I don't know, had to, well, I gotta fork another night, you know, uh, a hotel room, I gotta pay for another meal, I gotta pay for this, and those costs add up. I'm fortunate. I just went right back to the church. I went right back and I, ate whatever food father had for me. I didn't, although I did, funny enough, because it was late, I said, "All right, I didn't have dinner yet." So, well, I ordered something for dinner. And all right, I'll order it and I'll eat it. And then, we'll fly out. And just as I ordered dinner, I sat down, I looked at my phone, flight was canceled. I'm like, of
Mhm.
course. So before I even called father up, I just ate my sandwich and went back.
Yeah.
But that was part of the journey, but, that's what we do with travel. It's part of it. Now the next trip is out to New York, out for this retreat. I'm looking forward to it. I'm
At least you're driving.
yeah, I'm driving. I'll be driving. So I'm looking forward to the trip.
It's gonna be
That's
good.
kind of what I do.
It's a beautiful time of year 'cause someone did ask me, like, "Well, why are you having it so early June?" Because here in Rochester, school goes until June 24th. Sounds awful, and I said to her, I was like, "Well," because her children aren't nearly old enough for this anyway, but I said, "The majority of people that I have in mind, they're gonna be done with school by this point." And I said, "And you
Mhm.
don't wanna," then we're if we don't do it early enough, then we're getting into people going on vacation, or it's the middle of summer where I wouldn't put people through coming here because we don't have air conditioning. And if you're used to air conditioning, you come to a house in the summer that's not, it's gonna be a little uncomfortable. Maybe be a good experience and, kind of, suffering a little bit, but I was like, "I'm not gonna do this to people." I still think about when we had my, solemn vows in August a few years ago and how one of the hottest weeks ever, and of course, the following week, gorgeous, but how everyone suffered. So, um,
I
I'm just
I
oh,
for
it was
me, I remember it's like, "Okay, it's, father, let's go, chant Sexanon." "Yes, your excellency." It's not exactly how it would go, but we go for office. I'm dry as a bone. After about 15, 20 minutes, I come back, I'm not damp, I was soaking wet.
mhm,
You could actually probably have felt around where I was standing, and the carpet was wet.
could be, yeah.
That's how much I was
Yeah,
perspiring. I mean, it was just
mhm.
coming down. I was actually
Oh,
kind of amazed how much I was sweating. Uh, so yeah, that was
so
kind of fun.
it
It's
was
kind
very specific planning, and like I said, we have a wonderful turnout. Is it always gonna be like this time of year? I mean, probably, kinda, sorta,
mm,
um, but so everybody should be pretty comfortable. I
I'm
mean, we're
looking
praying for
for it.
decent weather.
It's gonna be good.
Um, it's gonna be good. I'm excited for it, and, it will after we have it, we'll talk about it a little bit to share how it
Yeah.
really went down.
We'll see how it
Which
goes.
I
Yeah.
expect it's gonna go well. It's gonna go well. These are great kids. I think all of them are, that's what I love about going down to Kentucky. It's always for the retreat, it's always a nice experience. It's rejuvenating and motivating for me to see children
Yes.
make a connection. And it gives me the push I need to, follow through with some of these projects I'm working on, trying to make that connection. But it is even also the tools or, all the things we get. It's also just the human connection.
Yes.
And I do think it is paying off for the children to be around us, even from a young age. And the fact that we do have teenagers actually, and I'm not talking like these are young teenagers. We've got some that are 18, 19 years old that are coming, um,
Mhm.
that I don't know if me at 18, 19 years old would be like, "Yeah, I wanna come." Maybe, I don't know. I was kinda knee deep in working full time, and I was just, I was an adult. But the fact that we do have this, enthusiasm, a chance to connect, and we've got conferences planned, but it's gonna be very, I had a word for it. Not super formal. Obviously, time in chapel, which we have time scheduled for to be in church, will be formal, obviously, but then it won't be um, so formal. And I have a nice little box for people to submit questions. So we have, um, like the last day during dinner, you got a question, you put it in there. Like that maybe you don't want to ask, or you don't like to be called on, because I don't like to be called on. That they could put that there, and then we can answer it and have a dialogue about it. So, and just having this opportunity for children in this age bracket to know that you can talk to us. I may only can listen. I might not be able to like fix a problem, but we could talk about it. And as you get older, how realize how important the faith is for you, and how you actually have to actively be a Catholic. You're coming to an age where you're out of your parents' home. Well, you drive, or you don't drive, but you have to find a way to get to church. You still have to make those things a priority. That's on you now. Um, so I think
Mhm.
I so just again, like that human connection.
Well, I look back, and for me, one of the things that really helps me in my vocation was my exposure, to the Franciscans, Father Bernard, Father Joseph, coming out to Rochester,
Mhm,
meeting Bishop Giles, getting to know Bishop Lewis more. That exposure, played a huge part, and you need to have that. You need to look at this as an option. To say someone, "How about religious life?" And you don't see anyone in that life. You're not really gonna consider it as a viable option, for you. And I like to think people see, uh, you can see that they're happy.
mhm,
Uh,
and they are.
very content, very content.
Mhm,
I tell people, it's like, I'm not gonna make the statement, like, I could never imagine myself doing anything else. Oh, sure, I could, because I was already well into my adulthood and had many experiences, so I can imagine myself doing something else. But would I want to? No, not really, no, because this is my vocation, and there's things that I'm able to do, I would never be able to do in um, if I was still in the world. Of course, the thing
mhm,
that stands out most is offering holy sacrifice of the mass. Um, it's a whole new level of that, though.
yes, yes, very nice.
So,
Wow.
it's a bit of what's been going on, and it's just a lot of little things, and now oh, we gotta get back on the old grindstone of our good old podcast, because this is I mean, I wanna make it just publicly known, I love doing this podcast. I love, um, what we're trying to create here.
Mhm. And we're growing in subscribers, and we're growing, but the Growing in Holiness channel has actually grown a little bit too. So that's very exciting.
Mhm.
After he received a really nice comment on one of the videos. Gentleman's from Mexico and is learning English, and he said these videos will help him with that. So it's like, all right, not that I needed a reason to keep going because I'm going to keep going. They do take a little time, but it's like, all right, like they say, just if it makes a difference to one person, it's worth it. Of course, when you think about that, it's like you may not know who that one person is. And ultimately, if you're doing it for God's greater honor and glory, that's the person too. So,
Yeah, the El hombre, de Mexico, habla inglés. The man from Mexico
I
speaks
mean,
English. I
Duolingo's really working out for you, isn't it?
I like Duolingo. I'm having a lot of fun with that. It's one of the other things because I guess it's kind of a yeah, like all the exciting things are coming up and that you're doing. I'm going back to Chile in January. I'm looking forward to that, seeing the people down there again. Wonderful, wonderful people. And it's
Yeah.
great. So
Just,
it's like work on my Spanish a little bit more.
just don't cross that bird on Duolingo and you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah. He just stares at you. It's just he's like, "You gotta do a lesson." Like, "Okay,
I
all
will say
right, all right."
eventually he does give up, but not without making you feel really bad about it.
But you know what? I'll give the bird and Duolingo I'll give Duo is what he's called. I'll give him credit. Yeah, it's just like the prodigal son, you go wander off, you're not there for a while, and then you come back, he welcomes you with open arms. So he does, and, of course, there's one time, this was before I got back on this horse, I accidentally clicked it. I was like, "Well, I wasn't time to click it," and it was exasperated with me. "Hey, wait a minute, you just came back, now you're not doing anything? What's going on here?" Um, anyway, it's fun, but it's very,
Good
very
times.
useful, and I really liked it as I saw this other app online, this other, language app, and basically it was, uh, oh, what's that word? What's the word when you're on a campaign and your advertising is slanderous against your opponent? And it had what was obviously Duolingo, the bird, and they changed it just enough where it's not copyright, but you knew who it was, and they were saying all the negative things. I'm like, "I don't know what you're all talking about. I think that this app covers all the things that you're knocking." I guess this is kinda my endorsement, Duolingo. It's not expensive, it's very useful, and when you really break into it and you start, now they bring your vocabulary together and you start, using, conversation, it's pretty good, and I would say this about learning a language, and now that I'm speaking more and more people who do where English is not their primary language, don't worry about perfection. Don't worry about getting it exactly right because I've just had a conversation, kind of an exciting thing with Bishop Mothergall. When I got down to Texas, Father Joseph and I were, trying to get a hold of Bishop Mothergall, and I said, "Well, we can just use WhatsApp." Which like another great tool. And we end up having a meeting with His Excellency on WhatsApp. And I'm listening to him. He speaks very good English, but I am listening going, but it's not perfect. And he himself with it, but he can communicate very well. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
well, I don't have to speak perfect Spanish as though I am a native. If I was in that environment, I'm sure that would, like, happen. Like Bishop Lewis, he spoke, he would speak French, so effortlessly. It was, but he was living in that environment, and, I
Mhm.
just like, yeah. I said, "As long as you communicate, people, they know what you're trying to say." And I think like, I know for me, I'm just, like, pleased that, hey, you're trying. You're trying to communicate in my language, and I can,
Mhm.
make up for the other side, but boy, did I go off,
No, that's
but
that's
it's
interesting. Well,
it's fun.
I'll put a little a note, if you wanna listen to the actual topic of the podcast, skip to this point. So,
Yes,
I can
it's 40
if you don't
minutes,
wanna well, yeah, maybe when I cut a little bit, it'll be about
roughly,
30 something, but, if you don't wanna listen to us recap and share our excitement about stuff, you know, click here.
and we understand if you don't. We
Yeah, I
understand
mean,
if you don't because
yeah, and I know there's people that do like it, so that's why we're not going to do it, but so that's why you provide the option, but, I listen to different podcasts, like, sometimes just hearing people just kinda chit chat, if you will, for a little bit does kind of draw you in a little differently, instead of just always going
yeah,
right
we're
down to business.
40
I
minutes
mean,
in, though.
well, you brought up the ruler, so and then I had to, like, burn in my
I brought up the
trauma,
ruler as being kind of a passing comment. Then we ended up, then we kinda unloading our childhood, I
which was a good childhood, you know?
it was a good childhood. I liked it. I thought we formed pretty well. So, okay, sister, are we ready to engage to the main topic of the of this
See,
episode? See, see. Uh, no, I could do it. Oh, no, I was gonna say, you know, never mind, never mind. I was gonna be cute and try to say this in Spanish, but never mind. What we
don't
were the main topic is that we're talking about one of the great, miracles of Saint Anthony of Padua. Uh, June 13th is his feast day, and, just a little background on this wonderful saint who is called the wonder worker of Padua. Uh, Saint Anthony, um, and I can't believe his, Ferdinand, I believe was his
I do think
Christian name.
that's correct.
Oh, it just popped out of my head. Oh, I'm embarrassed because I'm named he is my patron. He is my patron. Um,
I do
oh,
think that's correct.
yeah, Fernando. Fernando de, Bullion. Yes. Oh, Fernando. And from Portugal, he grew up with pious parents. He entered the monastery, I believe it was about the age of, between 12 and 15. He was quite young.
Yeah.
He became a canon's regular of St. Augustine, and he was very happy and content with his life. I remember in reading his life story that, uh, he originally I mean, as often it was the case, you went to the monastery, you went to your local monastery if there was one. So if you grew up in the town and there's a St. Augustine Monastery, you went to St. Augustine Monastery if you're going to the religious life, and that's what he did. One of the issues he was having is that he would often have family wanna come and visit him, and especially when you enter into the monastic life, you don't want your family coming around all the time. It does distract you from your vocation, and he requests to be transferred, and the event that really changed the course of Fernando's life was when a procession of Franciscans, this new order that just emerged within the church over the last few years, um, seeing these humble looking friars coming up the way with the remains of their first martyrs, the first 5 Franciscan martyrs, and Fernando was the one who I believe he was actually working as the porter that day, letting them in. And this is what inspired him and moved him to want to become a Franciscan. Um, so it kind of opens the yes, you can go from one religious order to another, but it has to be one of a very similar severity as far as the rule. So it's not that you can go from being a Trappist to being a I'm not sure if it like a Jesuit would be considered less, um, but, you know, I can't think of one, but you can't go to something that is, less stern in the rule. So this was not the case. Um, when he became a Franciscan, and he took the name Anthony because he had a devotion to Saint Anthony the Great of Egypt. And the thing that he wanted to really embrace was the humility and the poverty. Getting out one thing, two things. And he did not make known to his friars, the fellow friars, his superiors, that he was actually quite learned. And that's the one point that I kind of overlooked in explaining this overview of of his background. He was very learned. He was a doctor in theology and philosophy. He he was in scripture, so he knew his stuff.
It was very bright.
He was very bright, and but he did not want to make that known.
Mhm.
So it was kind of and he spoke of one of the first chapters that he went to. He kinda just wandered in, and no one knew where to put this young friar. Who is this kid? And they and he finally meets a one group. I believe it was Father Brother Angelo was his name. I can't remember, but they took him in. It's like, "Well, no one else will take him. We'll take this young friar." They kinda lived more like these were the hermit faction, if you wanna use the term. See, usually, we live a partial apostolic and monastic life. You know, you live, in kind of a cloistered community together, but you still have to go out into the world to preach the gospel. And, I know there's certain variations of that have evolved throughout the centuries, like you have the Capuchins and such, but there was a part even in the early days of the order where you had those friars who lived in seclusion. It's you can look at it that way that they focused on that aspect of of prayer more than the apostolic work because it was to help aid in the work of those who were missionaries and to pray for their works. So having a continuous prayer. Um, not Francis, Anthony then lived in one of those communities for a few years, and it was said it was probably his happiest time. He did the dishes, he, cooked meals, he cleaned the floors, he worked in the garden. As how he spent his life, ora et labora, prayer and work, until one day he was with a group of his fellow Franciscans to attend a ordination, and it was an ordination of both Dominicans and Franciscans, and they needed someone to preach. And the superior was asking, "Well, will someone come and preach a sermon?" And one of the brothers is like, I'm not ready. I have no time to prepare." He goes to another, same excuse, goes to another, same excuse. He goes to the quiet, unassuming Anthony. He's like, "Well, I know you're a priest." They knew he was a priest. And he's, "Well, want you to preach." And he respectively said, "No, I don't feel like I'm ready. Please excuse me." Well, I guess when he finally got to this point, the superior was getting just a little annoyed. He says, "No, out of holy obedience, you go preach that." So out of holy obedience, Anthony went up, he started to preach, and it was said that his words were kind of disconnected at first what wasn't sure really of what he was trying to convey, but shortly after, though, it all came together in this harmonious sermon, and we would assume it had to do with the priesthood itself, because that was the occasion in which he was preaching, and that was probably the event that changed his life, um, forever, because now he was the preacher. He was to be the wonder worker of Padua, and Padua is, of course, not where he was born, but is where he ended his life, and most of his work was in Padua. St. Anthony became the primary, no, the first, the first, teacher of theology in the Franciscan order. He was commissioned to do so by St. Francis himself. Um, this very crude overview, a
It's
broken overview.
I
Um,
think it's pretty good, Father.
Thank you. It just gives you an idea of who he was, and this now momentous task he had before him, uh, of preaching the gospel, but also having to deal with the heretics of the time, and there were many, because you had the Albigensian heresy that was, running rampant in the church, especially in France. So he was a major, uh, one of the major opponents against these heresies, which is one of the reasons he's been given the title Hammer of Heretics, because he just, I'm about to say, just broke these people down, but he destroyed their heresy. And he did so in many ways through his preaching, through his writings, and from time to time through his miracles. And there is one such event that I think the the miracle, how do I put it? Certain miracles that a saint performs, it almost looks like it comes from themselves. You know it's God working
Mhm.
through them, but this was a miracle that it was obvious where it was coming from, because it had to do with the Eucharist itself, which would then, segues the story that we wanna talk about. Before I do it, because I'm gonna read from the book, Saint Anthony, the Wonder Worker of Padua by Charles Warren Stoddart. This originally came out in, was it 1894? And, it's an excellent little book, and it is available. It's been reprinted, 1896. Excellent book. Um, but before I read this, anything you wanna bring up, sister? Any other points before we really sink our teeth into this?
Not at the moment, no.
Alright, okay. In the edition that I am reading from, this would be chapter 16, and it is called Anthony and the Israelite. There dwelt at Bourges, the capital of Berry in France, an Israelite who was, of all Israelites, the most bitter foe of the Catholic Church. He was the leader in opposition to Christian movement, an earnest worker in opposition to every doctrine that Anthony taught. Gilliard, the Jew, was not an ignorant and blind bigot. He was a man of intelligence, an honest doubter. Often he had listened to the preaching of Anthony, yet he was not convinced. Shall we not say that it was his misfortune rather than his fault that he remained without the fold and persistently assumed an attitude of antagonism? The dogma of the real presence of our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament was naturally his chief stumbling block. Much he could accept and much consider in a calm spirit of philosophical inquiry, but the Eucharist, transubstantiation, the perpetual miracle, was in his estimation past belief. For this miracle, he demanded miraculous proof. The Turk does not question the word of Mohammed, observed Anthony to his fellow of Didymus the doubter. The philosopher accepts the philosophy of Aristotle, but you, who pride yourself upon being a worthy Israelite, will not accept the testimony of the Son of God. I must see for myself with these very eyes before I can believe, replied the doubting Thomas. There are many who, like him, must put their finger in the wounds before they are convinced of the living truth. One day, Gilliard said to Anthony, Brother Anthony, if by some tangible outward sign you can confirm the truth you have demonstrated by reasoning, I will abjure my ancient creed and embrace yours. Do you consent? In order to save a soul, one may make great concessions, nor was it beneath the dignity of Anthony to offer visible proof to an anxious and inquiring eye. I consent, said he. I have a mule, added the Jew. I will keep him for 3 days under lock and key, and all that time feed him nothing. At the end of the 3rd day, I will bring him to the largest public square in the city, and there, in the presence of all the assembled people, I will offer him a feed of oats. And you, on the other hand, will come carrying the host which you believe is the true body of the Son of God. If the mule refuses to offer food in order to prostrate himself before the monstrance, I will become a Catholic and no longer question the truth of the doctrine taught by the Catholic Church. Here was a direct challenge, and it was not declined. Anthony felt that his victory was assured. The reward of the victory was an immortal soul. For 3 days the young apostle devoted himself to fasting and prayer. Not for one moment did he lose faith in the success of the miracle he was about to work, but he dared not attempt it without solemn preparation. Meanwhile, Gilliard and his companions were so sure of Anthony's total defeat and discomfort that there was much merriment at the wonder worker's expense, and the interest in the approaching test increased from hour to hour. The eventful day arrived. Gilliard and his friends trooped into the public square with smiles and laughter. So confident were they that the famished mule would instantly abandon himself to the oats. The immense throngs who had gathered to witness the impending spectacle were consumed with curiosity, and Anthony slowly approached, bearing reverently the sacred host, his eyes cast down. His air devout, devout, devo- his air devotional. A great hush fell upon the multitude. Excuse me. He was followed by a large crowd of faithful, singing canticles and whispering prayers. The mule was then led forward, and the oats lay tempting before him. At that moment, Anthony drew near, bearing the monstrance. Turning toward the dumb brute, he exclaimed, In the name of thy Creator, whose body I, though unworthy, hold in my hands, I enjoin and command thee, O being deprived of reason, to come hither instantly and prostrate thyself before thy God, so that by this sign unbelievers may know that all creation is subject to the Lamb who is daily immolated upon our altars. At the same moment, Gilliard and his friends presented oats to the famished beast. Without taking the smallest notice of the food, the mule, turning away, walked to the feet of Anthony and bending his knees, knelt before the Blessed Sacrament and remained there in an attitude of adoration. Great was the enthusiasm among the faithful. The heretics fled away in fright and hid themselves for shame. They dared not face the one who had proved that prayer is more powerful than the laws of nature. Many were so moved by the wondrous spectacle that, though they had long wandered from the path of duty, they returned to the fold. Gilliard likewise sought admission, for he could no longer doubt, and with him came his household. He publicly attested his faith, and in gratitude erected a church upon the spot where the miracle had taken place. That monument endures to this hour. As late as 1850, a block of marble, carved to represent a mule in the attitude of devotion, was discovered in the wall of the facade of the church built by Gilliard, and consecrated in 1231 by Archbishop Simon de Sully. Pierre Rosette, a doctor of the University of Paris and a poet of the 15th century, Wadi in his Annuals of the Friars Minor, Benedict Mazzara in his Franciscan Legends, bear witness to the authenticity of this memorial of a miracle. Toulouse and Rimini claim, like honor with the Bourges, that there are those who have believed that the miracle was repeated. The evidence is cloudy and conflicting in these days, but there is no shadow of doubt that Anthony, the wonder worker, worked that wonder in the ancient city of Bourges, and that Gilliard, the Israelite then, there built the church of St. Peter in honor of his glorious conversion. As I was reading it, the part that stood out to me more than any other was during those 3 days, St. Anthony spent that time in prayer and fasting and preparation. It reminds me of the scripture passage when the apostles and the disciples are trying to cast out a demon and they couldn't do it. They come to our Lord, who of course does it so effortlessly. And they say, Lord, how come we could not cast him out? He says, this sort of demon can only be cast out through prayer and fasting. So much preparation is needed. You can't assume on uh, on the idea that God is just automatically going to perform a miracle. Saint Francis, Saint Anthony, excuse me, was confident that God would allow this miracle to take place, but he wasn't so confident that he then would completely forego the preparation. I think Saint Anthony knew that it was kind of a prerequisite to the miracle, and to show that that he had that confidence in God, and to, and to pray for this, for the conversion. That was the most important part. It was an immortal soul that was in the balance, to pray for his conversion, asking God for this miracle. Because those miracles are not meant just merely to affect the person, but to all, the singular person, but all who are present. And it had quite an effect. Quite an effect. For those who already had the faith, it increased their belief, it increased their devotion. For those who did not, they ran away in shame and were confounded. But you have to give it credit to the gentleman Gilliard, because he gave his word and he held to it. That final stumbling block was removed. I'm sure that's what St. Anthony was praying for. If this one soul can come to Christ and be a devout servant of Christ, then all Anthony's efforts would have been worth it. All that prayer and fasting would be worth it.
Well, what comes to my mind is, well, ultimately his confidence, but I guess it's, something to think about. Because how often are we praying for some sort of miracle because we're still unsure? Like, it's still about us. St. Anthony, he knew. He he
Mhm.
he was very solid in his faith. He, um, understood probably a lot better than most of us, but, that because if God had decided that this this wasn't gonna be the way,
Mhm.
I'm sure he would've accepted that fact at least a lot more easily than we would've. But again, because this miracle wasn't for him, this challenge wasn't for him to, reaffirm his faith.
Mhm.
He was solid in that. It was
Mhm.
for the gentleman and the people. But again, like, how often are we praying for something because um we still want that, um, like, we need something to solidify what actually is already solid. Like, we shouldn't,
Mhm.
but, our fallen nature kind of that inclination is still there,
Mhm.
and I know it can be hard when you're praying for something and you're praying for something that's good, but it's still not happening yet, and to trying to accept God's will.
Yeah.
Um, it is a very big challenge. We've all been there, and I know there's people that are currently there, and, um, I think it's pretty good example that how Saint Anthony did embrace "Thy will be done, not my will, but yours," and that's what we all have to do every single day, is keep that in the forefront.
Well, and let's look at the circumstances. It was the gentleman who proposed the terms of this, um, what do you wanna call it? This contest, this spiritual contest. He said 3 days. Saint Anthony is not the one who said, "In 3 days, you do this, I do that." That man set the terms. So Saint Anthony spent that time in prayer and preparation to God. May these 3 days, in these 3 days, may you perform this miracle. It makes me think of how often when we ask God for his help, we're setting a time limit. We're setting a term. God,
Mhm.
please help me. If you don't help me in this time, then I have to do something else. Um, we cannot set a time limit to God. God knows the time better than we do. He knows when we need the grace is better than we do. And he knows that they can manifest themselves in a way that we might not expect. We might not, see it come to fruition the way that we thought we would or should. But we don't test God in this way. We should avoid that. It
Mhm.
really should be thy will be done. Now, yes, certain things happen as a time frame. Um, and we can ask God for help if it is his will. But it just reminds me in the book of Judith, when Jerusalem was being no, not Jerusalem, the other town, I forget where she was. Was it Bethsaida? I can't remember, was being attacked, and the elders all said, "Well, we're gonna pray to God for the next, like, week." Forget how long it was. If he does not answer a prayer, then we will surrender. And Judith, the holy woman, is like, when she found out what they did, that you can't put a time limit to God, how long you're gonna believe. You're basically calling God out. You're
Mhm.
saying, "God, if you don't do anything here, then we're gonna basically abandon you." Like, you're challenging God. It's like, don't no, don't do that. There's no humility in this act. Oh, it can appear that you're doing this for humble motives to the I'll put it this way to those who are less informed, it might look like you're being humble. The humble one says, "Thy will be done, O Lord. Let this chalice pass from me, but if it will not, let thy will be done." Whatever it is that is is to happen to me, whether or not I have, control, it doesn't matter. Thy will be done. I leave it to you, Lord. You give to me what you know I need, and that is good enough for me. You know what I'm asking you for. You understand my soul. May I understand my soul better and truly understand what's important. I leave it to you. Thy will be done. And that's St. Anthony's attitude. That man said it. He had confidence in God, but not was so confident that he assumed it was going to happen. He did his part. It was his sacrifice for the miracle, to deny his sleep, to deny his nourishment, to give himself to prayer. I would imagine it was St. Anthony was in constant prayer during that time, which reminds us of how important our prayer life is in our spiritual life. You can't understate it. You need this spiritual nourishment. You need this to help build your faith. It's like the prayer of the centurion who said to our Lord, "Lord, I believe, help my disbelief." It means increase my faith. St. Anthony was asking for an increase in his own faith, his own. He recognized his own unworthiness to hold our Lord in the monstrance before all the people, but knowing that he is an alter Christus, that he is a priest, this is his duty, looks at it with humility and says, "Lord, if it is your will, let this miracle happen." And that's what he requested. And he was able then to say with confidence to this beast of burden, "Kneel down before your creator, not before me, Anthony of Padua, before our Lord Jesus Christ here present in the Eucharist."
Um, so what was coming to my mind when you're talking about that
Mhm,
is that, some might argue as they're listening, "Well, Father, I can't, spend 3 days in prayer. I've got to go to work. I've got take care of my children. I have to do these things." It's like, and of course you do. No one's
mhm,
and this is not saying if you don't do those things, God is not going to provide for you. He does provide for us every single day. It doesn't mean he's not going to give you what you asked for because you didn't spend 3 days prayer fasting. Um,
mhm,
God knows that you can't do those things that same way. But
mhm,
are you still trying to figure out a time to seclude yourself to some time in prayer? Are you making any kind of small sacrifices
mhm.
throughout the day? I mean,
Yeah,
sure, you can't completely fast, but can you forego something that you normally would indulge in? And fasting does not always pertain to food. It's like, okay, well, maybe during like this 3 days of something, like you're up for something, you're really hoping it works out. Maybe you don't watch your favorite TV show at the end of the day to unwind. Okay.
yep,
Maybe you get up a half hour early of those 3 days to dedicate to prayer. Those are
mhm,
all things that you can do. Because sometimes, just as we're tempted to give God a timeline, to give him an expiration date, we're also drawn to, well, if I don't do it exactly this way, it's not going to happen. And that gets into like superstition. It makes me think of the Christmas novena, where it's some places it's promoted that if you say this, whether it's what 15 times a day, 30 times a day, or once a day, and by the 25th day or whatnot, you will get what you will ask God for. And
mhm,
and I hear people frame it that way, and it makes me uncomfortable only
mhm,
because it's just like, are you just doing that because you want something. And it's kind of like how, a child might, throw down some extra kindnesses to mom and dad because they have a big ask. And, and I'm not saying that there isn't anything wrong with maybe, like the child that, again, has a big ass is doing more chores than they normally do. So some people say, "Well, that, they're learning
Mhm.
to be manipulative." I say, "Well, no, they're learning that it's not a take and take and take. It's a give and take." It's like, would mom listen to me more clearly if I did get, and I'm not talking about your standard chores, but did a little something extra to relieve her burden so
Mhm.
that she can focus more on us. And we have so many distractions in this world that, and the lines get blurred too, that, some things are a distraction, but also kind of in some ways necessary. Like you use a device for a purpose, but somewhere along the way, it's still kind of distracting you. I mean, we've talked about it. Computer work is one of the most interesting things to me. Um, and I don't really like it in the sense that it takes a long time to do something on a computer to really see some result. And it's easy to get distracted,
Mhm.
easy to
Yeah.
lose focus, and we're really not meant to sit down for long periods of time. And so I'm definitely juggling different things when I work on the computer because I just can't stand just sitting here. But but sometimes we do have to just give something our full attention, and how often are we not really giving anything full attention? I mean, we all can admit we're not giving full attention in prayer, some more than others, but I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I mean, I get very distracted. But how in today, because we have our electronics and our phone, like, you're sitting across from someone and you're both, like, still, like,
Uh-huh.
kind of poking around. And I started watching a documentary about stuff like this, and it's like, what are you showing your children? What are you showing people around you? So,
Mhm.
and we really do need that in-person contact. I mean, I remember when text messaging became a thing, I was kinda like, "Oh, that's kinda weird," you know? And this is, really, really beginnings of it because you pay per text message. It wasn't part of your plan. And so you weren't really like throwing down all these text messages. But as it grew popular, there are advantages to it. Like I could throw a message to someone who I know is working and it's just like, because this is on my mind right now, like, I'm not expecting you to respond right away, but here, this is this. And sometimes they'll find a nugget of time where they can respond, but they don't always have to. So that is nice instead of like calling them. But I still try to do as much in person as I can, actual conversations with the person I'm speaking to, because lost a lot gets lost in, the tone and text and even on the phone. So you lose something when you try to take out of, the person out of I was trying to think of there was something in my mind, like, you're just taking the person out of it and who we are out of it. You have, like, this barrier,
Mhm.
and that's why, it it, um I was talking with someone about, like, the news outlet, like, today. Like, it's the overconsumption of all these different things going on, and ultimately, anyone could put up an article, and it's really just their opinion. There's not a whole lot of investigating before we just throw something out there because ultimately, um you want, like, a catchy title to throw people in, and then it just
Mhm.
messes everything up, like, and then people just not really getting to the actual story of it, not finding out the truth, they're just going off emotion, and people could just fire back comments on the internet, and you don't even know who they are, and then you let that impact you. So, that was oddly a kind of like a, I wouldn't say a tangent that I didn't expect to go on, but ultimately, um don't we treat God
Yeah.
similarly? You know? Um, so just trying to remember that you still can prepare yourself in a way. Just, as it used to be a common practice before Sunday mass that, you would make sure you're ready for that day. You know, how many people, and I know our
Mhm.
circumstances are such that it's not necessarily possible, but went to confession Saturday on a Saturday before Sunday, so their soul's ready. They, you know, Saturday night was bath time, so that Sunday morning we're ready to go get on our Sunday best and go. You know, those were all tactics to be fully prepared. So,
Mhm.
you know, I think before you really want to ask something of God, um, just really making sure you're prepared for it. Have you really, do you know what you're asking? How you're
Mhm.
asking, and um, and it's not just the words that come out of your mouth or what you say in your heart, but you know, just taking the time to really, like I said, ask properly is to make sure, you know, you have given your time with God in prayer and made some sort of sacrifice. Like, it could be anything.
Mhm.
I think we just think, "Well, it has to be X and Y, otherwise I won't get Z." Um,
Yep.
you know, and then, you know, I mean, you can be very motivated by other people's stories, um, and think, "Well, I have to follow their formula. That's what worked for them." I mean, it kind of falls in line with any,
Mhm.
like, health wellness journey, like, "Well, I did this, and this is all you have to do, and then it'll work." But there's so many other contributing factors to why something for you might need to be modified. So, you know, look at your situation. And so, because if you were to take, like, again, Father, I can't do 3 days of fasting and prayer. I have things to do, of course. But that doesn't mean you don't do anything and you just keep asking God for stuff like a gimme pig, as Bishop Giles likes to say. Gimme, gimme, gimme. That's all. We're a bunch of gimme pigs.
Yeah. Uh, well, in some circumstances present themselves where there is a pretty clear-cut time frame that you don't
Mhm,
designate yourself. So, just like in the situation with Saint Anthony, so you say, "Okay, during this time, really could use God's help here." Whether you not necessarily asking for some grand miracle, but for something of his divine aid, in a way that he chooses to manifest it. And during that time, whatever it is, you do give yourself more to prayer, and I think that's what you brought up. Removing those distractions, those lawful things you do. So you don't need to watch that video, you don't need to watch that TV show, you don't need to do that. Um, you can, give yourself more to just, pious meditation, pious reading. Um, take your rosary that you say every day. Maybe you haven't said it every day. During that time frame, make sure you say it and offer that rosary for this intention. There's so many little things that we can do
mhm,
that helps prepare us for God's blessings. And it's very interesting. Those are his blessings that prepare us for his blessings, his greater blessings.
mhm,
And we need it. St. Anthony of Padua would not have been able to do anything that he did, excuse me, if he was not working with the graces of God, if he was not giving himself the divine will. And he would have failed in what he did if he did it out of presumption, if he did it thinking that it was something to do with him and his holiness. It would have failed, and not only would have failed, it would have been caused such derision that, you know, who knows what the, outcome would have been, but that wasn't the case. He had simple childlike devotion, and his reverence towards the Holy Eucharist, emanated to everyone else and affected them, which is one of the reasons why, and I'll end it, with what I'm gonna say with, um, it just reminds me of that little coloring book I came across a few years ago of this very exact story, and it was following it very much the same till you had Saint Francis bring out the Blessed Eucharist.
You mean St. Anthony.
It was just what?
You mean St.
It was
Anthony.
just I'm sorry,
You said St.
what did I
Francis, and I think you said St. Francis.
oh, geez Louise, Father.
One
Well,
Franciscan for
if you're
another.
gonna confuse
Yeah.
yeah, right? Or
Well,
basically the same
if you ever
person.
see
No,
that one movie
Saint
about St.
Anthony.
you could see why you'd be confused.
We won't get into that.
Yeah, we talked
Uh and it was just him um, just casually pulling out a Host in his hand. People who are on YouTube can see me holding this t
Post-it
Post-it
note?
note sheet, just kinda holding it like, "Hey, what's up?" That's what he did. I saw that, I threw that thing out. I think, "No."
Yeah,
It's like, "No." And in this story, it relates how he held it in the monstrance. That's the way that he would have done it, with all reverence
with
and
the humero
respect to
veil.
our Lord in the Eucharist. And it takes us back to what these people have, you see in the Novus Ordo and how they give communion. And, I remember when our brother worked at a nursing home and, I find out that, that their Novus Ordo priest, he kept the Eucharist in his back pocket. I'm like, "What?
Yeah. When you think
What?"
about that, it's like, on the one hand, do they just know that that's probably not truly our Lord? Or do or do they just or did they just don't care? I mean, that whenever ugh,
Hard to say,
yeah,
but I
it's
think
hard to
it's just
say.
it's just, part and parcel with the humanistic movement and lowering our Lord to our our standard instead of trying to elevate ourselves to his. That is what I believe it is that just, it's just really calm and not calm, but relaxed type of atmosphere with God, and here he is, he's here for you, like, it's
Well,
still
and
our Lord
it
present
kinda
in the
makes you
Eucharist.
wonder. I don't know how it really works, but when you see talk about adoration in the Novus Ordo, people talk about going to adoration because it seems to me like there's, the Eucharist is present in the monstrance at all times, and I'm kinda wondering, but is a priest nearby for this? Because I feel like you can't do that, at least if the priest is not in the building, or you have someone. I mean, when the
Well,
Blessed Sacrament is exposed, there are rules. Because
they
when we
are
did
rules.
all night vigil, we used to do that. People signed up, and if someone didn't make it, the fathers would stay because you can't just leave our Lord there. Uh, so I sometimes I wonder, like, how does that work in their circle? But ultimately, I don't really concern myself too much with those things.
Yeah, well, I mean, you would have, in the Catholic Church, um 24-hour adoration in certain and not in every place, of course, but in certain religious communities, and it was a rotation. Someone was always there, or several were there. It just there was always gonna be that, and it was worked out whether it was with the laity or with whatever religious community, so,
Mhm. Yeah, just
it's a beautiful thing, but it's just it takes away from the profundity of this miracle to act like Saint Anthony just casually did this.
mhm,
No, he prepared himself. He
yeah,
he probably offered mass that morning, I would assume,
mhm,
and that may have been a host that he consecrated at that mass, which would
mhm.
not surprise me,
Not at all. Never thought about it, but that's a very
and he
good
came
point.
with confidence. Confidence in God,
Mhm. Not himself.
diffidence in himself, and, you know, desiring the salvation of this soul.
Yeah.
That's the lesson we learn from Saint Anthony. If you want something from God, if you wanna find get salvation for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for your enemies, you have to believe, not just with words, but with your deeds, and you have to give your life to Christ. So, with that said, a final thought, Deo gratias.
Deo gratias.